What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka New York Prepper. It is Memorial Day weekend 2021, and I wanted to talk to you guys about this crazy weather we've been having the last couple of days, and not just here in upstate New York, but all over the country. There's been some crazy weather, and specifically the weather's been very cold, and there's been a lot of cold weather across much of the northern tier of the United States, and many states have been seeing below average temperatures, some of them even reaching close to records. And what you're looking at here is the thermometer on my car, and it reads 49 degrees Fahrenheit right now. And just in the last 2 or 3 days, we haven't seen the temperature go above the high 40s since Thursday, okay? And it's Sunday night. So for the last 3 days, the temperatures have been in the 40s for high temperatures, okay? And it's almost June, okay? Tuesday, it's going to be June 1st. And I don't really see a lot of preppers talking about the significance of this. And this is really important, okay? And I just want to show you guys some of these strong winds we're getting right now. We've been having these really strong north winds for the last 3 days, which is very unusual for this time of the year. This time of the year, I mean, even in upstate New York, normally for high temperatures, you'd be looking at around 65 degrees, maybe 70, and low temperatures in the 40s, maybe high 30s in some areas. But we haven't gotten above 50 degrees for the last 3 days, and we've been having these strong north winds coming down from Canada. And I want to show you guys some of these winds here right now. I'm just gonna get my flashlight here and show you guys some of these winds, okay? Check this tree out over here. You can see these gusty winds, and we've been having this really weird low pressure system that's been parked over us for the last 3 days, okay? And it's been bringing these gusty winds and rain and cold temperatures. So I don't see a lot of preppers really talking about this, and I do believe, guys, that we are heading into a possible little ice age or global cooling period for the next 20 to 30 years. And a lot of you guys that have been following the weather for the last 10 years, you'll notice that in the last 10 years, the winters have been colder since about 2010, okay? Before 2010, between 1995 and 2010, we had some really warm winters, and many winters here in upstate New York, we didn't get even any snow at all. And that's when Al Gore was really popular with his global warming thing, all right? But the switch was flipped around 2008. We got a really strong La Nina in 2008, and that caused massive winters across the entire northern hemisphere. And just since 2008, something changed. You know, the switch was flipped, and now we're in a cooling stage, or in a cooling period. And I think that as preppers, we need to prepare for that, okay? We need to prepare for the possibility of a global cooling period coming in the next couple of years, okay? Next 10, 20 years, okay? And if there's a global cooling period, guys, it's not just a short-term thing, okay? It's a long-term change in the climate, okay? And that can have a massive effect on everything. It could affect the food supplies. It could affect the fuel supplies, okay? Food and fuel would be heavily affected if there was any kind of global cooling period. Number one, growing seasons would be shorter, okay? And possibly there would even be summer frosts and freezes that would kill crops. So not only would you have shorter growing seasons, but you would have late season frosts and even frosts throughout the summer in many areas that would lead to crop failures. Okay, and I know a lot of you guys are thinking that I'm going down the rabbit hole by now, but if you study history, I urge you guys, those of you guys who are skeptical and think that I'm fear-mongering or that I'm sensationalizing everything, or that I'm going down the rabbit hole, I encourage those of you guys who are very skeptical about this to read about the Maunder minimum, okay? Go and do yourself a favor and look up Maunder minimum or the Little Ice Age on Google, okay? And you'll see that the Maunder minimum was a grand solar minimum that occurred between 1400 and 1600. And during that time period, we had what was known as the Little Ice Age, okay? And during the Little Ice Age, global temperatures were cooler than normal, okay? And in fact, during the Little Ice Age, it was so cold that the River Thames in London would freeze every single winter, and they would have frost fairs on the river itself because it would freeze so solid that they would have frost fairs on the river, okay? And that's the main river that goes through London. That's the River Thames, okay? Guys, that river doesn't freeze at all now, okay? It would be very unusual if that river were to freeze now. So just think of how cold it must have been for that river to freeze every single year, and for it to freeze so solidly that they were able to have these frost fairs on the river, okay? And that could easily happen again, okay? That could easily happen again. And the science supports the possibility of that happening in the near future. And this is not something that I just started following. You know, I'm not the type of guy that just jumps on a bandwagon because I saw somebody else talking about it, so I feel that I have to do a video on it. I've been following this since 2010, okay? I didn't just watch a couple of videos of Ice Age Farmer and decide to, start talking about the grand solar minimum and the coming Ice Age or the coming Little Ice Age or global cooling period. This is something that I've been following for the last 10 years, okay? So I'm not new to this thing, and I know a lot about it. And what I can tell you guys is that we could be heading into a dormancy stage of our sun, okay? And what that would basically mean is that the temperatures would go down, okay? Global temperatures would go down because the sun is not going to be as strong as it normally is, okay? And the reason why is that we're heading into what's known as a grand solar minimum, just like the Maunder minimum during the 1400s to 1600s, okay? So we could be heading for a little ice age very soon, okay? We could be heading into a little ice age very soon. So, you know, this weather that we've been having the last few days, I know a lot of people are going to forget about it in a couple of days. It's supposed to warm up, and people are going to completely forget about this weekend and the cold weather that we had. And people just want to move on and get into summer already. But I encourage you guys not to forget about this weekend and the wicked weather that we've been having the last couple of days, because I believe that this is a warning sign of what's to come, okay? And I've talked about not just the grand solar minimum on my channel, but I've also talked about how we're in the middle of a double La Nina this year, okay? We just came out of a La Nina last fall, and we're going back into another La Nina this winter, okay? Now, when there's a La Nina during the winter time, that's bad, okay? That means that there's going to be more polar vortexes and snowy weather, okay? So as preppers, we need to prepare for all different types of scenarios. We can't just prepare for what we want to prepare for or what we think will happen. We have to be well-rounded and be adaptable. And so I encourage you guys to think about, okay, how would you handle a global cooling period, okay? What would happen if over the next 5 to 10 years we had very cold winters? And not just cold winters, guys, but late season frosts, okay? Right now, it's 49 degrees and it's almost June. In 2 days, it's going to be June. What if the temperature dropped into the 30s here, okay? And it was 35 instead of 49. And everything froze and there were frosts everywhere and everybody's crops died off and the farmers' crops died off and people's gardens froze. Okay, that could easily happen. Just because it hasn't happened in our lifetime or many of our lifetimes yet doesn't mean it can't happen, guys. It happened in prior generations, not just in the Maunder Minimum and the Little Ice Age, but there was also the Dalton Minimum. And in the Dalton Minimum, there was something known as the Year Without a Summer. And the Year Without a Summer was in 1816, and that was literally a year where there was almost no summer at all, where there was snow reported in the northeastern United States in the middle of July, okay? So, you know, how would you guys handle that, okay? If there was snow in the middle of July and there were massive crop failures and you know, widespread frosts and freezes across the entire country in the middle of the summer or a very late time of the spring, and it caused a lot of the crops to fail, do you guys have a contingency plan for that? Okay, that would cause a massive food shortage. Okay, if something like that were to happen, it would cause a massive food shortage. Okay, so you know, make sure you have enough food stored up, because if something like that were to happen, food is going to be the first thing that gets affected, and then after that, fuel is going to get affected. Okay, I predict that if there's a global cooling period or a little ice age, we would see a shortage of heating fuel and propane and all kinds of fuel, okay, because people are going to be consuming more fuel when it's cold outside to keep things running, to keep their houses warm, and factories and businesses are going to need to consume more fuel, and I think we could see fuel shortages in a situation like that, okay? So you need to think about not just stockpiling food, okay, and when I say stockpiling food, I mean not growing a garden, because a garden can freeze, okay? I'm talking about freeze-dried food and canned food, okay? These are food items that you can consume no matter what the weather is, okay? You can throw it in the closet and store it for 20 years, and you don't have to worry about the weather or insects or anything, okay? But not just do you have to think about storing food, but you have to think about fuel, okay? If there's fuel shortages because of global cooling, how are you going to handle that? How are you going to keep your house warm? If you heat your house on heating oil or propane, okay, how are you going to keep your house warm if there's a shortage of heating oil or propane, okay? You have to think about alternative heat sources, okay? The best alternative heat source is a wood stove. Okay, wood stoves, in my opinion, are the best alternative heat source, okay, because you can collect wood from the forest and you basically have a renewable fuel source, okay? So think about getting a wood stove. If you can't get a wood stove, think about, you know, other means of keeping yourself warm, okay? Because if there's a little ice age or global cooling period, fuel is going to be short, okay? It's going to be in short supply, and not only could the sun cause global cooling via the grand solar minimum, and obviously we talked about the double La Nina, but another thing to think about too is volcanoes, okay, and volcanic activity, okay. Volcanoes can cause global cooling, okay. It's a well-known fact. Look at this north wind, guys, pounding this little tree here, okay. That's a north wind, and the winds were really gusty earlier. They were like 20 miles an hour, very strong gusty north winds. Very weird weather, guys. But if we have a massive volcanic eruption of some kind sometime in the next few years, that could plunge us into a global cooling period, or a temporary cooling period that may last a year or two. And we could have late season frosts. We could have snow and freezes in the middle of the summer. We could have a year without a summer again, like there was in 1816, which was caused by the eruption of Mount Tambora. And again, this is all historical, guys. I'm not, sensationalizing anything. It's all, it all happened already, okay? So do yourself a favor and read about the Maunder minimum, read about the Little Ice Age, read about the Dalton minimum, read about the year without a summer in 1816, and read about the eruption of Mount Tambora, which many people think caused the year without a summer. And also read about the eruption of Mount Pinatubo, which was very recent. That was in the 90s. All right, we had the eruption of Mount Pinatubo, which was a very strong volcanic eruption in the Philippines. And the eruption of Mount Pinatubo caused a very cold winter that year, okay? When Mount Pinatubo erupted, there was a very cold and snowy winter that year, and you could look that up. It's all there, guys. I'm not making any of this up. I'm not trying to fearmonger you guys. I'm just trying to get you guys to think about what-if scenarios, because everybody's focusing on the virus and stuff like that. But we have to remember that the climate is also very important, and we have to keep an eye on what's going on with the climate. And, what happens if tomorrow there's a massive volcanic eruption and it causes a volcanic winter, okay? Are you prepared for that? Do you have food? Do you have fuel? Do you have preps for cold weather, okay? I've talked about this in many of my videos, and I talked about it most recently in a video. I talked about the double La Nina and the winter this year that I think is going to be cold. Now's a great time for you guys to go out there and stockpile winter gear, okay? Because it's not in high demand, so you can get good deals on winter gear like wool and Gore-Tex and things like that, boots, okay? Now's a great time to go out and get winter gear, outerwear, sleeping bags, wool blankets, snowshoes, okay? Think about how are you going to get around in the snow, okay? If we get a global cooling period, either because of the grand solar minimum or very strong La Ninas or volcanic eruptions, okay? And it's not just one strong volcanic eruptions. There could be multiple weak volcanic eruptions, and the combination of all those volcanoes erupting together, even though they're not that strong, they push a lot of ash up into the sky, and that ash blocks out the sun, and it can cool the climate down, okay? So think about how are you going to get around in a situation where there's a heavy snowpack, okay? If you have 1 to 2 feet of snow on the ground for 3 months out of the year, and normally you may have a 1 to 2 foot snowpack for 3 or 4 weeks, how are you going to deal with that? Do you have snowshoes? Do you have a snowmobile? Okay, do you know how to dress for cold weather? Okay, do you have cold weather survival skills? Do you know how to build a snow shelter, a snow hut? Okay, do you know how to treat cold injuries? Okay, now's the time to start thinking about it, because once the winter comes and the temperatures plummet, okay, it's going to be too late. Okay, once the little ice age comes, it's going to be too late. Okay, you don't want to be like everybody else, panicking, trying to get everything at the last minute. Now's the time to stock up on food. Now's the time to think about alternative heat sources. Okay, you know, now's the time to practice your cold weather survival skills and practice, you know, using your cold weather gear. Don't just buy it and throw it in a closet. Put that gear on and go outside and practice with it. Okay, become familiar with it. All right. Now's the time to stockpile your cold weather gear, your outerwear, your sleeping bags, your snowshoes. Okay. If you want to get a snowmobile, that's not a bad idea either, especially if you live in the northern tier of the U.S. Okay, so I just wanted to bring this to your attention, guys, that I'm a little bit concerned about this cold weather we've been having over the Memorial Day weekend the last couple of days, and I'm taking it very seriously. I think that it's an indication of what could be it could be an indication of a coming ice age of some kind, or a global cooling period, or at the very least a cool winter or cool summer this year. So get prepared, guys. Okay, I know summer is coming, and naturally, you know, when summer comes, people don't even think about prepping or the winter or anything like that. Okay, but don't get into that kind of a mindset where all you're thinking about is the beach and margaritas. Okay, you know, don't slack off. Don't forget about prepping, and keep in mind that our climate is changeable. And just because, you know, our climate has been relatively stable the last, you know, 50 years or so, doesn't mean that it can't change. Okay, it doesn't mean that we can't have frosts in the middle of summer that could affect our food supply. All right, so think about that, guys. Think about how you would handle all of this. What would you do if there's a global cooling period, a little ice age, all right, brought about by either volcanoes or the solar minimum, or you know, La Nina, which is a natural ocean cycle that happens every couple of years. All right, think about how you would handle that. And that's all I got for now, guys. Thanks for watching. Take care. God bless. And don't forget the 3 Ps. Prepare, practice, and persevere.